மேம் உங்க பிரின்சிபல் மேம்
அவர் வரல, நான் செக் பண்ணி பார்ப்பேன்.
பிரேமலதா மேம் வந்து மேம் டாக்டர் பிரேமலதா மேம் அன்மியூட்.
மேடம் குட் ஈவினிங்.
யார
Good evening, ma'am.
திட்டுனீங்க? யார திட்டுனீங்க? யார திட்டுனீங்க?
திட்டினதா என் பையங்களையா இருக்கும். சவுண்ட் டிவி சவுண்ட் கேட்டுச்சு,
சரி சரி.
அதனால குறைச்சு. ரவி சார் குட் ஈவினிங்.
குட் ஈவினிங் மேடம், எப்படி இருக்கீங்க? நல்ல மாதிரி ஆவல்.
நல்லா இருக்கும். ரோசம்மாள் மேடம் வந்துட்டாங்களா?
அவங்க வரலம்மா, நான் அவங்க கூப்பிடுறேன்.
ஓகே மேம். அவங்களுக்கு நல்லா தெரியும்.
உங்களுக்கு தெரியாதவங்க யாருமா இருக்குது?
அவ்வளோ ஃபேமஸா?
அவங்க ஞாபகம் வச்சிருக்காங்களான்னு தெரியணும். ஆனா நமக்கு தெரியும், அவங்களுக்கு தெரியக்கூடாதுல.
மேம் வந்துட்டாங்க, பிரின்சிபல் மேம் வந்தாச்சு. Principal ma'am, good evening. Good evening, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening, Namaste. Good evening, good evening.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, madam.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, teacher. Shikti ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
அவங்க வந்து நம்ம நேத்து ட்ரையல் பார்க்கலையா, அந்த லிங்கான்னு நினைச்சிட்டேன்.
நீங்க திருப்பி அனுப்பலையா மேம் அவங்களுக்கு?
திருப்பி அனுப்பிட்டேன், ஆனா அவங்க அதான் நினைச்சிட்டேன்.
ஓகே
இப்ப வந்துருவாரு.
திரும்ப வர சொல்லுங்க. ஓகே. ஏன்னா எனக்கு அவங்க நம்பர் கிடையாது, இல்லைன்னு நான் அனுப்பியிருப்பேன். நீங்க அனுப்பியிருப்பீங்க.
என்ன அனுப்பிட்டேன், அவங்க ஏன் பார்க்கலன்னு தெரியல.
ட்ரையல் பார்த்ததுல
அதான்
அது ஒன்னா ட்ரையல் தான், அது ஒர்க் ஆகாது இந்த லிங்க். பிரேமா மேம் நீங்க தான் பழிச்சுன்னு இருக்கீங்க. யூனிவர்சிட்டியில இருக்கீங்க? அன்மியூட் பண்ணுங்க.
இப்ப இதுக்காக வீட்டுக்கு வந்தேன் மேம், எனக்கு ஆபீஸ்ல டவர் கிடைக்கல.
தேங்க்யூ. நான் கூட ஃபர்ஸ்ட் ப்ரோக்ராம் முடிச்சுட்டு ஹாட்ஸ்பாட் ஒர்க் ஆகுதோ என்னமோன்ட்டு அடிச்சு முடிச்சுட்டு வந்தேன் வீட்டுக்கு. இப்பதான் வந்தேன் நானும்.
இன்னைக்கு எங்க ஆபீஸ் யூனிவர்சிட்டியில வேற ஒரு ப்ரோக்ராம் வேற, அதனால டேட்டா காலி ஆயிடுச்சு. வீட்டுல வந்தா நெட் கனெக்ஷன் பண்ணிக்கலாம்ல.
நான் அங்க காலி ஆயிடுச்சுனாலும் யாருக்கிட்டையாவது கணக்கு கொடுத்து விட்டுறலாம்னு நினைச்சேன். பட் அதுக்குள்ள வந்துட்டேன், வேல்யூஷன் முடிஞ்சதுனால கிளம்பி வந்தாச்சு. நாளைக்கு தான் அவங்க மார்னிங்ல 3 செஷன்ஸ் மேடம், தொடர்ச்சியா
நாளைக்கு
4 o'clock வரைக்கும் அவங்க செஷன். 4 to இது
நல்லா இருக்கு.
ஆமா,
சூப்பரா இருக்கும்ல.
இல்ல ஒரு இதுக்கு கோவிந்தராஜ் சார் ஹோஸ்டா மாத்தி விட்டுறலாம்.
சார் ஏதோ ஒண்ணு சொல்றீங்களே நினைச்சு பயந்துட்டு போய் பாக்குறாருங்களே.
எனக்கு சில நேரங்கள்ல காது கேக்குறது இல்ல.
நல்லது சார். செலக்டிவ் செலக்டிவ் அமினிஷியா மாதிரி.
ஜெனரலா அந்த முதுகெலும்புங்களோட வேலையை வந்து யாருக்கும் தெரியாது. நீங்கெல்லாம் அந்த மாதிரியான கேட்டகரி. இப்ப வந்து இந்த முதல் முறையா வந்து முதுகெலும்புகளை வந்து இப்ப முகம் பார்த்து பேசுற மாதிரி ஒரு தருணம். இந்த இயக்கத்துல இருக்கிறவங்க எல்லாரையும் சொல்லிட்டு இருக்கேன்.
அவங்க என்ன நேம்ல வர்றாங்க?
அவங்க பேர்ல தான் மேம் வருவாங்க. ரோசம்மா, டாக்டர் ரோசம்மா.
அவங்களோட போட்டோ இன்னும் எங்க யூனிவர்சிட்டியில இருக்கு. ஒரு விசிட்காக வந்திருந்தாங்க.
அப்படியா? உங்க யூனிவர்சிட்டிக்கு வந்தாங்களா மேம்?
ஆமா மேடம்.
ரஞ்சினி மேம், அவங்க அனுப்பின பிபிடி டவுன்லோட் ஆக மாட்டேங்குது.
ரஞ்சனி மேடம்.
One second, ma'am.
We are not able to upload her PPT, ma'am. It is not able to. We are not able to download it.
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Rosama madam came. Hello, I have added her, ma'am. I included her in the panelist.
Okay, good evening all. Am
Good
I
evening.
audible?
Madam, good evening. Welcome back.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Sorry for the delay.
Good evening, ma'am. Dr.
evening,
Rosma.
good evening.
Good evening.
Rosama madam, good evening.
Good evening, ma'am.
How are you? I am Premalata from Bharatiyar University.
I have seen you.
Are you able to remember, ma'am?
Yes, I came there for the NCT visit too.
Yes, ma'am, yes. Still we have your photos with us.
Oh, thank you so much.
Hello, Rosma teacher.
Remember, ma'am?
Hello.
Teacher,
ടീച്ചറെ കാണാം നമസ്കാരം.
നമസ്കാരം.
Shivshakti ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Can we start?
Yes, ma'am.
Or wait for more 5 minutes?
Dr. Rosma, ma'am, please try share the screen.
I have already sent it mail. Let me try now.
Okay.
Do you want to operate by your
Already I
phone, or do you want Dr.
No
Shivshakti
problem.
to assist you, ma'am?
Is it visible now?
Yes.
Screen is
Yes,
visible?
ma'am. Yes, visible.
Yes.
No problem. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Visible. Ma'am, Dr. Anjani, ma'am. Dr. Anjani, ma'am, we can start.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Hello.
The voice is breaking, ma'am, actually.
രജനി എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ ആന്റണിയാണേ നെറ്റ് പറഞ്ഞു.
No, still breaking.
Hello. Can I go and come back?
Yes, ma'am.
Can I leave then I rejoin?
Doctor. Okay, ma'am.
Mike.
Yes, Dr. Anjali ma'am.
Now is it okay, ma'am?
Yes, okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Can we start?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
Difference is the essence of humanity. It's an accident by birth, so it should never be the source of hatred or conflict. The answer to this difference is to respect diversity. So the fundamental principle of diversity, to honor it. Most distinguished Vice Chancellor of Tamil Nadu Teacher Education University, Dr. Panjanathan Sir, the renowned Registrar, Tamil Nadu Teacher Education University, Professor Balakrishnan Sir, esteemed Dean and Head of Department of Educational Psychology, Tamil Nadu Teacher Education University, Professor Govindan Sir, the most respected Principal of NSS Training College, Pandalam, Dr. V.K. Usha Devi Ma'am, the lively Organizing Secretary and my dear friend, Dr. Shivashakti Rajamal Ma'am, respected Organizing Joint Secretaries, respected Organizing Team Members, esteemed resource person, especially today's resource person, Dr. Rosama Philip, ma'am, treasured participants and friends. A very happy good evening to all. Today is the second day of our one-week international webinar on honoring student diversities, mechanisms and practices. Thank you for joining with us today for the program. Our topic today is teacher preparation for embracing student diversity by an outstanding resource person, Dr. Rosama Philip, Principal, Mount Abu Training College, Pattanapuram, Kerala. Before starting the program, let me give some instructions as a reminder. The participants can write their questions in the Q&A session of Zoom and the chat box of YouTube. If you want to interact directly with the resource person, please click the raise hand option. Now, without further delay, let's start the welcome address. I invite Dr. Srivranda Nair, Assistant Professor and Director, Research Center, University of Kerala, NSS Training College, Pandalam, to deliver the welcome address.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Audible.
Okay. A warm welcome to all to the second day of our international webinar on honoring student diversities, mechanisms and practices jointly organized by Center for Capacity Building Program for School Teachers, Tamil Nadu Teacher Education University and IQAC of NSS Training College, Pandalam. My duty is to welcome today's resource person. Before going to invite our resource person of today, I would like to welcome the organizing committee of this webinar on behalf of Tamil Nadu Teachers Education University and on behalf of NSS Training College, Pandalam. First of all, I would like to welcome the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Tamil Nadu Teacher Education University and patron of this webinar, Professor N. Panjanathan. As we heard yesterday, he can be described as a captain, or as his name implies, a Nathan of this program. So I would like to call him the Nathan of this program. And his administrative excellence and proficiency and lofty thinking are certainly the key elements of this webinar. Dear sir, the words I got from your teachers about you are proof of this. With all respect, I welcome you, sir. Next, the co-patron of the webinar, Professor V. Balakrishnan, and Registrar TNDU, and we are sure his ideas and guidance have been very helpful to organizing this type of webinar. Welcome you, sir. In any program, we know the conveners, they are the persons who plays an important role. Here we have two program conveners, most respected Professor M. Govindan, Dean of Faculty and Head, Department of Educational Psychology, TNTU, and our beloved principal, Dr. V.K. Usha Devi. Dedication of both can be seen reflected in this webinar. Thank you, ma'am, and thank you, sir. I welcome you both. The contributions of the organizing secretaries is immense, and they are the ones who have worked hard to run the webinar. Our organizing secretary, Dr. Ranjini Devi, the super smart figure, have worked very hard to organize this webinar. As we all know, the organizing secretary of TNGO, Dr. T. Shivashakti Rajammal, will also have a hard time to organize this webinar in a systematic manner. Ma'am, really, you are not only a super smart fellow, but a person with superpower. Your name itself indicates that. Shiva Shakti, superpower. Welcome, dear teachers. Next, I would like to welcome the organizing joint secretaries and members of TNGO and NSS Training College, dear participants, research scholars, and teachers from various institutions. Welcome to all. Next, we have to go to today's resource person, Rosama Philip, and she's the principal of Mount Tabor Training College, Patnapuram. And she is a very familiar person to NSS family. And she is a person who holds many positions like member, Board of Studies in Education, University of Kerala, former member syndicate, University of Kerala, expert committee member, core curriculum committee, member NCT visiting team, resource person of Human Resource Development Centers, IGNO, SCRT, and other educational agencies. And she is doing very remarkable works to the women community and organizing personal guidance programs and special programs for women teachers. And besides that, she has been actively contributing to the Panchayat and municipalities for rendering guidance and educational development programs, social skill programs like that. Her expertise is also contributed through the media. He is participating in various discussions and seminars and many TV channels and All India Radio. And she has won many awards. Best Researcher Award, Best Innovative Practice Award by NCRT are some among them. She has published several national and international, several articles in national and international journals and had visited abroad to attend many conferences. Beyond all that, she is a very good speaker and having a sweet voice, and she is very dear to us. And we are very happy today we have such a great person as a resource. Dear teacher, very lovingly, we are inviting you to this webinar. Thank you all.
Hello.
Yes,
Rosama
ma'am.
teacher.
Yes.
Now we can proceed, ma'am.
Okay. Good evening, one and all. Most Honorable Vice Chancellor of Tamil Nadu Teacher Education University, Dr. Panchanathan sir, Registrar, Dr. Balakrishnan sir, Dean of the Department, Dr. Govindan sir, Principal of NSS Training College, my close friend, Dr. Usha Devi, dynamic organizers of the seminar, of the webinar, I should say, Dr. Shivashakti and Dr. Ranjini Devi, Shri Vrintha, teacher, my close friend, all teacher educators, teachers and other participants, a cordial greeting to all. At the outset, I would like to congratulate Tamil Nadu Teacher Education University as well as NSS Training College Pandalam for organizing such a webinar on a very remarkable and significant theme nowadays. Yesterday, we have listened the class of Dr. Jawahar and heard about diversity in a very broader perspective, from geographical diversity to cultural, food, lifestyle, clothing, everything we have seen yesterday. As teachers, when we come to the classroom, there are certain specific aspects of diversity to be faced by all teachers, and for that we have to go more deeper into issues and the challenges that we face in the classroom. The concept of diversity itself is continuously changing, especially when we come to this COVID pandemic period. The situation shows that we have to think in different perspectives. During the month of June, while Kerala government started online classes suicide just because of the reason that she hadn't a television or a smartphone for attending the online class. So electrical connectivity, electronic devices, internet connectivity, all these are becoming some of the measures that decides more differences in the concept of diversity. Today also we have witnessed the news related to the suicide of a student who couldn't attend the NEET examination that conducted yesterday. And the attendance of the NEET examination during the year 2019 was more than 90%, while it is reduced between 80 and 85 as reported by news. All these show that the problems related to diversity and faced by the students are varying. And now we think about digital poverty. And we have to add one more needs in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that is digital needs. So the lack of digital needs also causes diversities among the students. And there are many other aspects to be discussed, very specifically while we discuss the topic of diversity. As I have mentioned earlier, even though we think about diversity in terms of ethnicity, race, gender, socioeconomic status, there are many unseen elements to be handled carefully to solve the conflicts related to the student differences. I would like to share a few incidents from my own career. A student teacher went for school internship in a rural school. She was teaching the subject of physics. While she was teaching, there was a boy who was continuously making disturbances for the students as well as for the teacher. So she intervened. She commanded, gave the instruction in a very cordial manner, please sit down. Don't disturb other students. Please be seated. Immediately, the student ran towards the teacher and tried to attack physically. The student teacher became stunned and she left the class, approached the class teacher. Teacher consoled her, don't worry, this is not because of your problem. This is an issue of his own. The class teacher gently called him to the staff room and inquired whether he hadn't taken the tablet in the morning. He immediately replied, no teacher, no. What is the real problem here? The student has been taking medicine for conduct disorder for past many years. And some days when he is reluctant to take the tablet, he is making problems, aggressive behavior in the classroom. See the changes in the issues related to diversity. One teacher shared an incident in the classroom. In the 6th standard classroom, a girl showed an odd behavior. She belongs to an affluent family, but the behavior related to stealing, especially stealing materials, eating eatables from the bags of other students. So the teacher tried to contact with her mother and identified the reason that she was suffering from juvenile diabetes, type 1 diabetes. We know that these sort of problems are increasing to a great extent nowadays. 30 years back, while I was a postgraduate student in a college where more than 2,500 students were boys and girls were admitted to postgraduate courses only, I had a classmate, a boy with all the features of a girl. His style of conversation, gestures, style of walking, everything resembles that of a woman. I still remember the challenges and the struggles he faced in the campus. He was reluctant to move through the corridors or walking through the playground during the daytime. He usually came to the college early in the morning before 9 a.m. and left the college after 5 p.m. to become invisible among his friends. Transgender was not a category of sex during those days, but now we believe and we accept the category of transgender as our friends, our brothers, our sisters, our fellow human beings. So the issues are changing. Some diversity related aspects are seen, but more than that, the causes and the elements are unseen before us. So as I have mentioned earlier, the concept is continuously changing, and we have to see in a very broader perspective with lot of dimensions in the spectrum of diversity. Let me present some of the views related to this concept of diversity, embracing diversity rooms. Is it visible for you, the screen?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay. So the topic we are discussing about specifically related to the teacher preparation, or what are the ways by which we can equip the teachers, the prospective teachers, the practicing teachers to embrace student diversity. I believe that we all naturally embrace the student diversity indirectly or directly in many ways today in our schools, in our institutions. We know in all our institutions, students have uniform. It's a simple thing, but it denotes a lot. It shows, it indicates many implications for the society. Why do we wear uniform? The students get a feeling of proud while they are in a crowd, while they wear the uniform. At the same time, it acts as a tool of equity and equality so that the students behave as if they belong to a learning community. This is a simple technique that we use in our schools to celebrate student diversity. In almost all institutions, we have ramps and drills which are helpful for those students who are physically weak. That we adopt in our daily activities to help the students to manage their needs related to diversity. So we cannot say that this is something very new or we have to do a lot to embrace student diversity. Why do we plead for student diversity or teaching for meeting the student diversity? We all are familiar with the 4 pillars of learning as suggested by United Nations Dallas report. Why do we learn? It implicitly indicates why do we teach. Why do we learn and why do we teach are related to the 4 pillars of learning. Learning to know, learning to do, learning to live together, and learning to be. Just glance through these 4 pillars. We are sure that the first 2 pillars are very easy to achieve. It is very easy to learn or teach to know certain things. We can easily practice the do concept of learning or teaching. But when we come to the third and the fourth pillar of education, is it easily possible to achieve the pillar, the concept of live together? The knowledge or the activities we perform should help us to live together. This is an important challenge that we face nowadays. The rational thinking, the logical thinking, the critical thinking, all these sometimes guide us to break the bonding of live together. So this is very important that we have to think about this particular pillar of education so that learning and the process of teaching helps all individuals to practice the concept of live together with peace. We have to become the ambassadors of peace. There may be differences, there may be diversities, but with the fuel of tolerance, if we are able to live together, that itself is an indicator of successful life. Why do we think about diversity, or why do we think about to practice certain measures to meet the challenges related to diversity? Because we are the practitioners of humanism. Yesterday we have seen different concepts related to existentialism, pragmatism, realism, and humanism too. Humanism is the most important element to be practiced and to be cherished in a classroom where a teacher, being a human being, handling students who are human beings. We can easily rank people according to their skills, their talents, and their abilities. We can rank them according to 1, 2, 3, according to their skill, according to the skills they demonstrate. But is it possible to rank individuals based on the humanity, based on the dignity? Never. All are equal. All are to be treated equally. So this thought related to humanism, this motivation for identifying the human dignity and worth should be considered while we practice in a class. Teachers are supposed to be the proponent of unity in diversity. Teaching, of course, it's a profession and it is closely related to the services we are entering to the society, we are entering to the student community. So when it becomes a service, when we plead for unity in diversity, see, a simple calculation, if we add unity plus diversity, naturally it will become university. If we all believe that university is an institution of higher learning, if all are educated from universities, if we all possess degree certificates from universities, of course, that is to demonstrate the belief, values, and attitudes related to unity in diversity. What are the various types of diversity? We have seen yesterday the diversity in terms of the general population. But when we come to a classroom, specifically, what are the student diversities that are to be addressed by a teacher? Physical diversity, we know the differences in the appearance of the students, their height, weight, color of the skin, hairstyle, facial expressions. All these are entirely different. And related to that, the health status also is very important. Because the physical health is a regulatory factor that decides the student enrollment, attendance, and punctuality in the classroom. So the health status is an important component of student diversity. If the student doesn't possess adequate physical health, that may lead to different learning issues. Intellectual diversity, we know the differences in the intellectual capacities. That leads to differences in cognitive processes. And all those processes related to information process skills are emerged from the intellectual capacity of the students. When we perceive things, when we encode things in our memory, when we try to interpret them, analyze them, when we try to relate them, and finally, when we are able to retrieve them for future purposes or in daily activities, all these are cognitive activity that is associated with our intellectual capacity. The most important problem, usually the teachers are dealing with related with intellectual diversity. The marks, the grades, the promotion, everything. We believe that they all are related to the intellectual diversity of the students. And when we come to the skill diversity, we know the students have different skills related to different fields. But in the context of physical diversity and intellectual diversity, it can be predicted that quite often physical diversity and intellectual diversity leads to differences in the priorities of the skills demonstrated by the students. A student who has adequate health, good physical status, will naturally involve in physical activities, skills related to physique or that utilizes the body. Those students who possess high intellectual abilities naturally involve in those activities where he engages in cognitive activities or thinking processes. So all the skills one demonstrate or all the skills we try to show priority are related to physical diversity and intellectual diversity. And when we think about physical diversity, intellectual diversity, or skill diversity, see, as teachers, it is very easy to identify those traits related to the physique or the intellectual or the skill dimension. Or we can say that it is directly observable, it is measurable. But when we come to the personality trait diversity, is it possible to observe it quite often or measure it naturally? It's very difficult. All those personality traits decides the emotional status of the students. We know, even though a student has the intellectual capacity or the physical adequate health status, but the attitudes and the manner to achieve or not doing similar activities or not engaging in learning activities. So when we come to personality trait diversity, the teachers have more responsibilities to identify the different dimensions of the personality traits that decides the emotional components of the students. Then again, the student diversity related to their homes. We know the socio-economic status, the home learning support, the religious, political, all those sort of beliefs, and all these constitute the culture of the student, and the cultural diversity is an important element in a classroom. But it is not easy to identify home-allied diversities within the classroom framework. It requires more effort from the part of the teacher to go deeper into the diversities related to the home. And we know that quite often we face many challenges from the part of the students that emerges from the problems related to their home. Though there exist different diversities, different issues related to individual differences, we believe that a teacher can do a lot, because that's the reason in our belief that the teacher have multiple roles. We believe that teacher is a guide, teacher is a scaffolder, teacher is a facilitator, teacher is a mentor, teacher is a counselor, teacher should be a role model for the students, and many, many more to add. Because why the teacher has these multiple roles? Just because to compensate, to address the issues related to diversity. Of course, a teacher can address the problems related to this. We can compensate the deficiencies, and at the same time, simultaneously, we can accelerate the strength of students. Diversity doesn't indicate that there are weaknesses and shortcomings solely. No, there are many merits, many strengths to be addressed in the classroom. So of course, if a teacher is ready to serve the multiple roles in a very sincere way, in a very committed way, naturally, he can meet the issues and the challenges related to the classroom diversities. We think about student diversity. Here comes an important question. Is teacher a cause for generating some diversity in the classroom? Think about two students sitting in class A and class B. In class A, there is a mathematics teacher, a professionally qualified teacher, very competent teacher, very expert teacher, adequate knowledge in the content, skilled in pedagogical content knowledge, techno-pedagogical content knowledge, and transact the content in a very efficient manner, and has all the capacities to manage the class also. And when come to class B, there is a student attending the mathematics class by another teacher who is professionally qualified, possessing a BA degree, but not competent. He or she possesses content knowledge only, no pedagogical content knowledge, no techno-pedagogical content knowledge, and merely transacting the content in an unskilled manner. Now come to the learner achievement. The student who sits in class A achieves high, whereas there is an achievement gap for the student who attends in class B. So sometimes the diversity in the teaching skills and teacher abilities may cause more diversities in the student population, the student community too. That's why we have to think about an inclusive pedagogy. An inclusive pedagogy in the sense that we teach for all students, guiding them towards holistic development. Whole students in the class should be considered while we teach in the classroom. And at the same time, our aim is to guide them to achieve holistic development. Intellectual, physical, emotional, social, spiritual, and all sorts of developments are to be integrated through the teaching process. That is essentially the aim of an inclusive pedagogical practice. Why we think about inclusion? Because we feel that, we believe that no student remain invisible in the classroom. The visibility of the students should be ensured while we teach in the classroom. The opportunities we provide in the classroom through our interactions, through our interaction with the students, through the student interaction, we ensure that the student is visible for the teacher and visible for the peers too. So this visibility of the student is to be cherished in the classroom. So for that, inclusion is essential. What is inclusion? What are the guiding principles when we come to the pedagogical practice of inclusive education? What is I? I is a belief and a practice by the teacher. I am with you. When the teacher gives a message in the classroom through the interactions, through the presence, through the communication that I am with you, that is a motivation for the student. Simultaneously, each student has to convey the same message for his fellow student that I am with you. This concept of cooperation, mutual support, and mutual respect is the most important principle of inclusion. What is N? We have to generalize the fact that no two students are alike. We have to identify the individual differences in the classroom so that we treat each student as a unique human being. But you see, we always believe in cooperation rather than competition. We promote healthy competitions in classrooms, but it aims at guiding the students to cooperate effectively in the classroom. In spite of the competitions or through the competitions, finally, we come to a cooperative atmosphere. We will share our experiences through certain reflections. What is L? Learning is the aim of attending a classroom. Always learn with a purpose. And this purpose will be different for different students. It may change according to the varying situations, according to the skills one possesses, according to the attitudes, life. whatever it is, we have to learn with a purpose. And the duty of the teacher is to set goals for the students, achievable goals for the students, and helping them to move towards that goal. What is you? Our ultimate aim is happiness, no doubt. Whatever things we learn, we do, they all should help us to derive happiness in our daily activities. See, when the national education policy, new education policy is there for reference, we can see that during the middle stages, there is a project, fun project for the students. And it is envisioned that the student will attend the school with fun, and those will be bagless periods for the students. They will attend the school without bags, without textbooks, because fun and fun related activities are very important for reducing the stress of students, which will enhance the learning process in the classroom. So happiness curriculum is the aim of all teaching process, all learning process. And if we are not happy with our life situations, the knowledge we acquired, the knowledge we possess will be useless. What is S? Sufferance is the fuel. It is the fuel of life. Sufferance, that is consistent endurance, patience in all the struggles of life. And we believe that there are problems, there are issues and sufferings in our life, but we have to demonstrate tolerance, we have to demonstrate patience, and we have to live happily in all problems in the midst of struggles. And finally, when we arrange the three letters together, inclusion, ION, we know what is ion. Ion is not an atom. It is not a molecule. Atom and molecule are complete in all aspects. But when we come to an ion, ion is a charged particle just because of the fact that it has gained or lost some electrons. So life is actually a process of gaining and losing something. And through that, we get charged for the life. If we achieve perfection in everything, we will be like atoms or molecules which are very stable, don't try to interact with other things. But when ions are there, ions are the carriers of charges, electric charges, for all types of motion. And this is through certain gains and losses and pleasures are essential for surviving in a classroom and surviving in a society. Success and failure both decides the achievement. That's why Abraham Lincoln wrote a letter to the class teacher of his son saying that teach him to enjoy while he faces failures, and teach him that every success has its own disappointment. So success and failures are to be combined in a classroom so that our students can face all challenges of our life. So inclusion is actually a phenomenon that helps everybody to live successfully. When we think about inclusion, think the question, include whom? Include whom? We include students. But we can always see two categories of students, student with and student without. Who is a student with? Student with all supports. Student with a very conducive learning environment, a very supportive family, educated parents, financial stability. At the same time, we have a category of student without. It is not easy to identify those students who are belong to the category of student without. We always think of a student come from a home come from the safe environment of the parents. But it is not always the case. While we interact with the students, we can say that home is still an imagination for them. We have a lot of students who lack parents, who are coming from separated homes, who have many problems related to family instability. So inclusion means we have to consider these two categories of students, and these two elements contribute to their emotional integrity. Now, when we practice inclusive pedagogy, we say that this pedagogy is an active pedagogy. This is an engaging pedagogy. This is an equity pedagogy and a culturally relevant pedagogy. These terms are very familiar for us. What is active pedagogy? We believe in a classroom. We believe in the students who are actively engaging in the classroom through various thought processes. What is engaging pedagogy? As teachers, we believe that our duty is to engage all students throughout our classes. Whatever it is, whether it may be a lecturing or explanation from the part of the teacher, but we have to ensure the engagement of the students in the classroom. And we plead for equity pedagogy, where we provide equal opportunities accessible to all students according to their needs and their interest. What is a culturally relevant pedagogy? Each student who comes from different cultural context believe that he or she has something to contribute in the classroom. The entire classroom climate may be different from his own culture, but still there is a space for the student for his cultural contribution in the classroom. So that is culturally relevant pedagogy. When we think about the pedagogy for diversity, the most important practice for the teacher is that identify the heterogeneity of a classroom. We all like homogeneous group because it is very easy to convey our concepts or ideas for a group when the group is homogeneous. But when we come to actual classroom, we know that it is heterogeneous in various aspects, and the identification of heterogeneity itself is very important for a teacher. If a teacher can easily identify the various components of heterogeneity, the teacher can address those issues related to each diversity components. So identification is the first process for a teacher while teaching in a classroom. And accept the heterogeneity of the class. Even though it is challenging for us, we have to accept it in a pleasant manner, considering the human dignity of the individual students of our classroom. How is it possible? How the identification process comes in a classroom? The most important thing is, as we know, it is through observation. We have already seen that the physical diversity, intellectual diversity, and skill diversity are observable, can be identified, and quite often measurable too. So when we come to observation of our students, it helps us to identify many components related to individual differences. But the most significant issue related to observation is that If we possess certain prejudices, or if we are biased in our observation, naturally the result will be entirely different. Entirely different. Okay. So as a teacher, impartial observation of the student without any prejudices help to identify each student in a unique manner. And this individual observation should be done in two ways in the classroom. One is through intergroup observation and through intra-group observation, so that the teacher can identify the intergroup culture and the intra-group culture. As teachers, we all are familiar with the group dynamics of the classrooms. The classroom groups are indicators of many issues as well as many problems related to a class. So identifying the nature of the different groups of a class will help us to infer different things related to diversity. What are the different criteria of forming groups in the classroom among the students? What is the nature of relationship between the groups? What is the relationship of each member of a group within the group? So as a teacher, if we can identify and analyze the nature of intergroup culture and intra-group culture, naturally that will help us to get many conclusions related to heterogeneity. Of course, that will help us to plan strategies in the classroom. Next important aspect is, as a teacher, we have to think about the multiple perspectives thought process, and at the same time we have to guide our students to think in multiple perspective manner. See the figure, what we can see there is a glass with some water. One person says it is half full, while the other person says it is half empty. Which is the right answer? It is very difficult to reach a conclusion because both are right answers in multiple perspectives. See the figure. What can you see? Butterfly, flower, buds, plant, or as a whole, the face of a beautiful woman. It depends. See the figures? What do you see? If you look at the white space only, you can see a wine glass. If you look at the dark space, you can see two faces facing each other. The other figure, you can see the face of a person. But if you look at the extreme sides, you can see two animals. But it is not easy to see for all in the same manner. Now see the perceptual difference. The person stands at one side, says there are 4 sticks. He can count 1, 2, 3, 4, and he says there are 4 sticks. Whereas the other person argues that there are only 3. Which is right? There is no right conclusion. But the conclusion is that there exist perceptual differences among individuals. So we have to think all concepts in multiple perspectives, to tolerate with the opinions of other people, to accommodate others in our group, to identify their arguments, to cope up with the disagreements of other people. We have to understand the perceptual differences and think in a multiple perspective. This is an important element that is to be practiced in a class for inclusion. While we come to a class with students of diversified skills, diversified talents, in order to make them emotionally stable, the most important duty of the teacher is to enhance the self-esteem of our students. Whatever be their problems, their issues, their shortcomings, their merits, self-esteem decides their attitudes, their motivation, behavior, and of course, the learning process too. So always start from self-worth. The teacher should be a person with positive self-esteem so that the students can internalize the confidence, self-esteem, and the self-efficacy belief through the interaction of the teacher. So whatever be the differences in the classroom, the development of a self-concept is important to develop other emotional or personality traits to become a balanced or a mature personality. It is not an attempt to compel them to develop a self-concept which is not matching their abilities, their self, just like the figure where a cat sees his image as a lion. That is an exaggerated self-concept. So the true self-concept is to be developed through the interaction with the teacher, through the interaction with the peers, and through self-introspection or reflection. And when we believe that no two individuals are alike, it is foolish to compel them to compare each other. See the figure where the fish in a big bottle compare himself with the fish in a small bottle. The comparisons are entirely different. The big fish in the small bottle think about the small fish is enjoying the facilities of the large vessel, whereas the small fish in the large vessel is dissatisfied with its physical appearance while comparing with the fish in the small bottle. So this is actually the matter of comparison, where dissatisfaction and disappointment is the result. So as teachers, while we deal with diversity and individual differences, comparisons are to be eliminated in our communication. And when we come to develop a good self-esteem, self-concept, the most important thing is to help the learners to define their self. See the figure of a prominent lady of the world, Lizzie Velasquez. See the figure. He is a diversified human being in many aspects. Her appearance is not very appealing for us. We cannot say that she is very beautiful. And her picture was posted in the internet as the ugliest woman of the world. Being a woman of 31 years, her weight is less than 29 kilograms, suffering from a disease where fat is not accumulated in her body. Being represented as the ugliest woman of the world, she became very disappointed. And during the year 2012, she published her first talk, a short talk through YouTube titled, "How Do You Define Yourself?" She says that it is not the physical appearance, it is not the physical beauty that defines the self. It is the beauty of the thought that decides the beauty of a person. So in spite of all the difficulties, all the discouraging words, she motivated the whole world, the whole woman community, the whole girls to believe in the strength that one possesses. So helping the learners to define the self by adding the talents, by adding the potentialities, by adding the skills, not by exaggerating the shortcomings. When we address the issues related to diversity, this is an important role of the teacher. The teacher himself or herself should define first with the skills she possesses. At the same time, he or she should help the students to define the self in a very positive way, so that the interactions and the attitudes will be very positive that help them to accomplish their goals in life. Another important factor of inclusion in a classroom is the language used by the teacher. We know quite often the words used by the teacher are insulting for the students, and they complain that teacher said like this, she insulted me, showed partiality towards me, just because on the basis of the language used by the teacher. When we analyze the teacher language, we have to think about the visual language, that is the body language of the teacher, the eye contact, facial expressions, the hand movements, even the posture conveys a lot for the students. Suppose there is a student in our class who doesn't get an eye contact during a class for the 40 minutes. She will take it as a negligence from the part of the teacher. So maintaining an attentive eye contact for the students itself is embracing student diversity. When we come to the language through the verbal mode, we have to be very cautious in the words, the sentences we use in the classroom, because that should be positive for the students without making any ambiguity of meanings for the students. And when we come to the vocal language, the pitch, pace, and the tone of the teacher indicates a lot for the students, and they interpret different meaning for the different pitches of the teacher. And today we think about the visual language also. Our communication through WhatsApp groups, through online mode, all this have its own implication for the students. And teacher must be borne in mind that the language used in the classroom should be satisfactory for all students, irrespective of the differences that prevail in a classroom. What is in a name? It's a very familiar question for us. But sure, there are many things in a name. We all like our names. We have to respect the names of each student. Each student name has its own significance. And there are certain preferences for students related to their names. A student named Sunita Rani Lakshmi complained that teacher always calls her as Rani or Lakshmi. And she says, it's not fair to call me like that. I like the name Sunita, that's my name. A boy, Jeevan Babu, is always called as Babu by the teacher. And he says, I like my name as Jeevan, Babu. So the name itself has a lot to say about diversities, and teacher has to identify the preferred names that are to be identified and used in a classroom. Labeling is an important problem faced by the students. Certain names we use in the classroom for some students, for doing some activities, for doing some mischievous things, or whatever it is. Labeling develops inferiority feeling among the students. There is a beautiful film in Malayalam by Mammootty, Pranchiyettan. Pranchi, the name given to Mammootty during the childhood, during his school days, became a hurdle and a barrier for his whole life. His actual name was Francis, but his class teacher labeled it as the son of Aripranchi. Thus his name became Pranchi. And throughout his life, he couldn't escape from that name Pranchi, the limitations of that name Pranchi. So try to use the names of the students in appropriate way, in a purposive manner. Try to avoid situations of microaggressions in the classroom. What are microaggressions? They are defined as subtle, intentional, or quite often unintentional interactions or behavior from the part of the teacher with some sort of bias towards marginalized groups. For example, if as a teacher, I respond to a student's answer like this, very good, you are speaking in very good English, even though you are coming from a rural place, your English is good. I am telling it in a very positive manner, but it has a hidden message that rural students are incapable of using good English language. So these are causes of microaggression. When a student gives a good answer, if the teacher says like this, oh, I didn't expect such an answer from you, there is a hidden message that my expectations regarding you, related to you, is not very good. So this is a cause for microaggression. That's why I have discussed the concept of teacher language in the classroom. So whenever we use certain phrases, certain comments in the classroom, maybe unintentional, quite often we are not aware of it, but this may cause to microaggressions in the classroom, which will reduce their interest in attending the classroom, and indirectly that will affect their learning process, their affinity towards the subject of that particular teacher. So we have to use language without causing microaggressions in the classroom. Minimize tokenism is an important thing to be practiced in a classroom. What is tokenism? It is existing, prevailing in all fields of society. Suppose that in a group of decision makers, there are 19 gents and only one woman. What does it indicate? It is a male-dominated group, but as a token, to satisfy the society and to convey the message that we are giving due representation to the women community, trying to include one woman with 19 men. That is a practice of tokenism. Symbolically, we are giving representation to minor groups or marginalized groups or unrepresented groups. And we pretend that fair things are practicing through that. is not based on solid belief that their presence is essential. That is tokenism. In almost all colleges, when we come to college council or college unions, we know that the chairman, that position always for gents. And we say that the vice chairperson post is reserved for girl students. Of course, that is a tokenism. We think about diversity, we try to practice diversity, but while we reserve the post of vice chairperson for a woman, there is the prejudice that the chairman, the chairperson, is from the category of men. This sort of tokenism will discourage the philosophy of diversity. That is against the concept of inclusion. But if you practice based on the belief that this is good for a gathering, this is good for a group, then it is okay. Otherwise, when we try to convey the message to the community that we are practicing something good by giving a representation, that becomes tokenism, which is against the concept of inclusion. We think about the different teaching strategies. All those teaching strategies should be according to the educational needs of the students. We all are familiar with the child-centered curriculum, and we plead for flexibility. We say that it should be participatory, and at the same time, partnership with the parents is essential. Even though these are theoretically okay, we haven't got an opportunity to see a flexible curriculum. We are unable to practice the participatory curriculum in the classroom. What is the partnership with the parents? There also, many times, we can see the instances of microaggressions. When we come to parent-teacher associations or parent-teacher meetings, quite often it can be seen that the authority, the administrator of the institution, select a few people as the office bearers of the PTA, and those will be familiar for the teachers. Those persons will be from the category of employed persons. And why do we ignore the presence of each parent in a meeting? There may be illiterate parents. There may be parents who are coolies, unemployed women. The presence of each parent is to be ensured by giving due representation for them to talk, to participate, and to engage in school activities. When we think about the strategies, the most important skill to be possessed by a teacher during the 21st century classroom is the diverse skills itself. The teacher should be a person who can demonstrate diverse skills within and in relation to his or her discipline. Hence, we believe that cooperative and collaborative learning strategies are highly helpful for that. Whatever differences are there, group activities and cooperative learning atmosphere gives opportunities for the students to interact each other, sharing experiences, making dialogue with each other, so that enculturation or acculturation, all these processes come in a classroom. Even though diversity is actually the reflection of certain multiple skills, multiple abilities by students. So whenever we think about programs and activities, teaching strategies, it should be according to the multiple intelligence that are to be established in the classroom through various activities. At the same time, we know the importance of language. Quite often, language becomes a barrier in communication in the classroom for the students, whereas purposeful efforts are essential to help students to overcome the language barriers, to become active learners, to engage actively in the classroom process. Dialogue as an important strategy ensures the sharing of experiences, sharing of thoughts, sharing of conflicts, and that is to be promoted in the classroom. So the conversation between the teacher and the students and between the students and students are very important in a diversified classroom atmosphere, because this will provide opportunity for discuss, debate, and of course to disagree with each other. These all are essential skills to be practiced in the classroom. And while we think about classrooms with global platforms, the most important element is intercultural competencies to be demonstrated by the teacher as well as to be developed among the students. We have to respect the culture of each individual. And we all are familiar with the theory of Vygotsky, who advocated that knowledge is a social and cultural construct. So knowledge is to be constructed in a cultural context in the sense that different cultures are to be integrated, are to be interacted effectively in a classroom so that the knowledge and meaning in that context. When we think culture, we have to see it from other person perspective, another person world views, so that we can easily respect the culture of other person. And how do we demonstrate that we respect the culture? We have to become good listeners, listening our friends, listening persons from other places, and we have to adapt to various situations of our classroom, our staff room, our school, or wherever we are. And this adaptability helps us to bring a good relationship between us. Of course, intercultural competency aim at good interpersonal relationship, and that is established through cultural humility, because each culture has its own significance. So we have to display cultural humility in all our interactions. Whatever strategies we practice in the classroom, the most important competency related to that is the ethical competency. As a teacher, if I'm able to practice the ethical competency, naturally, I will be an advocate of diversity. If as a teacher, I encourage my students to practice the ethical competency, naturally, the class will be a place where all live happily and successfully. So each one has to act responsibly by taking the responsibility of one's own behavior and try to avoid the conflicts of interest in the classroom or in interpersonal relationship. Do no harm is the theme of ethical competency. Who are sitting in the class, whatever the activities, do no harm to others. We all are familiar with the term Ubuntu. It's a program, a computer program, but it's an African philosophy, believing that I am here just because of you. So both of us are to be respected, are essential in this planet. That is Ubuntu. So do no harm to other people. And while we practice the ethical competency, always draw a line between all sort of relationship in the classroom. What should be the nature of relationship with teacher and a student, student and a student? That all are guided by the ethical competency one possesses. So when we practice inclusion, it should be based on the ethical competencies with the guiding principle of encouraging other people and doing no harm to others. When we come to teacher education level, we have to prepare the prospective teachers to think about inclusion and practice inclusion. For that, the student teacher should have their own perceptions related to diversity. How is it possible? We all are familiar with SWOT analysis. And while we help our students, we try to analyze the strength, the weakness, the opportunities, and the challenges they face. Naturally, that will reflect the diversity of the individual. This will help them to identify the different components related to diversity. We have to give and in the curriculum for practicing curricular adaptability. Yesterday we have learned from Jawahar sir the pedagogy, the eclectic pedagogy, how to synthesize the best pedagogy according to the context. Now we have topics at B.Ed level and M.Ed level related to individual differences, inclusive education like that. But when we come to the practice of curricular adaptability, we cannot see much content related to that. We have to promote innovation in alternate mode of teaching. While we teach, while we help our student teachers for practice teaching, they are to be encouraged to innovate alternate mode of teaching for addressing the issues related to diversity in the classroom. The most important barrier before our student teachers is lack of interpersonal communication skill, which will enhance their relationship with the students. As I have mentioned earlier, the most important aspect while we come to the issues of diversity is to identify the diversity aspects in a classroom, and those identification comes through communication. So we have to give more importance to interpersonal communication skills at B.Ed level. We have to provide opportunity for our student teachers to identify the barriers in practicing diversity. While they go for practice teaching, let them identify the barriers in classrooms when they practice inclusion or inclusive pedagogy. And when we come to the practical works, we have to encourage our students to prepare remedial materials and enrichment materials to satisfy the needs of diverse students. When they are able to prepare teaching learning materials related to that, it will help the schools as well as the students to diminish the achievement gap and to learn more effectively. The model suggested by Hurtado et al. Gives 4 key areas for a diversity environment in the classroom, which is to be addressed at the teacher education level, because The students' social identities are very important. The faculty identity is an important factor in facing the challenges of student diversity, the curricular content, and pedagogy. Thus, who we teach, who teaches, what is taught, and how it is taught is very important. So the practice in teacher education level, the training at the teacher education level should be oriented to these key areas. And teachers, prospective teachers, get a deep understanding about the different components of diversity. And whatever diversities exist in a classroom, ultimately, what is the role of a teacher? Teacher should be an ability magnifier. See the figure? This is how common sun looks magnified up to 300 times. Each sun has a beautiful structure. But the only thing is that we have to see it in a very magnified manner. So as a teacher, if we are trying to see through a magnified lens to identify the abilities of the students, naturally, we can accelerate those abilities by eliminating and diminishing their disabilities. So as ability magnifiers, we teachers have to identify the qualities and the abilities of the students in the classroom, accept their diversity, promote their abilities, and we have to respect their human dignity so that ultimately we teachers and the students gain happiness through the process of teaching and through the process of learning. I extend sincere thanks for your patient listening throughout the session. Now, it is over for discussion.
Shivashakti ma'am.
Yes,
Shivashakti,
yes, ma'am.
am I clearly audible?
Yes, clearly audible.
Okay. So Rosama ma'am, thank you so much for such an amazing experience, such a wonderful experience. And thank you so much for joining us. And you have very beautifully explained the role of teacher and different strategies, different techniques, and what should we do as teacher educators. Loads and loads of things were explained so beautifully that it reminds me of a phrase, beauty with the brain. So thank you so much for joining us today. So now it's time for question and answer.
Thank you so much.
Here are questions in the question answer session. I'll read out for you. First question, how can we enhance diversified skills among teachers who are still dominating the classrooms to meet diversified students' needs in the classroom? Am I clear, teacher?
Yes. Okay. Yes, I have mentioned that diverse skills are to be demonstrated by a teacher in the classroom. And this is for helping the students to practice, to enhance their diverse skills. When we come to a classroom, teachers, as mentioned in the question, still teachers are the dominant factor of, we see classrooms where teacher-initiated classrooms are more in our schools and our institutions. When a teacher try to use diversified skills in the sense that, I have already mentioned that the teacher language, the visual, verbal, vocal, and the virtual language of the teacher can play a role to impart diversified skill in the classroom. The body language of the teacher itself indicates a lot for the student. Appropriate body language supplement classroom learning, help the learners to imitate, to internalize the nature of responses and reactions that has to be expressed through visually. And the language used by the teacher, if the teacher is very proficient in using the language, of course, the participation in that class itself is an asset for the student to internalize the language of the teacher. And the vocal aspect of the language, the way by which we use our language with appropriate pitch, pace, etc., help the learners to use their own language appropriately. At the same time, the teacher can add a lot of other skills simultaneously in the classroom. Just like Dr. Jawahar sir shared yesterday, the different talents that a teacher possesses can be integrated in a classroom. Because during this time, while we watch the online teaching through the channels, government television channels, we can see how a teacher integrate different skills in a classroom to convey the textbook material or the content from the textbook. So different skills are easily integrated, whether it is a drama, skit, a song, dance, or acting. Everything can be integrated in the classroom so that the student get to feel that his talent related to that also can be utilized to learn. So as a teacher, I feel that teaching platform is the best platform to blend different skill to make it as an art and a science. We believe that teaching is an art and a science. So the aspect of art comes when the audience get a feeling of happiness, enjoyment. So just like sir mentioned yesterday, the concept of edutainment is to be cherished for inclusion, education plus entertainment. Through that, we can display the different skills in the classroom so that the students get a feeling that their merits, their talents, their potentialities can be leveraged for the learning purpose. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. And the second question is also from the same person, Madam Savita Pandey. What is the role of colleagues and school head in encouraging ethical competencies among teachers?
Yes, it's an important question. Quite often, there arises certain challenges from the part of the administrators or the management related to ethical competencies, because sometimes the administrators or the educational leaders believe that maintaining certain rules, punishment, and rules and punishment is the reflection of discipline. And we give more importance to discipline by displaying or by implementing punishment in institutions. And we say that this whole sort of discipline is related to ethical aspect of the educational process. And I strongly agree that it is through the head of the institution, through the educational managers, the ethical competencies are to be demonstrated initially. We cannot compel teachers or students that you have to do this, you have to do that, without practicing this from the part of an educational administrator. So the role of the educational administrator is very important in demonstrating the ethical competencies, so that without any compulsion, naturally, with that presence itself, naturally the teachers and the students will follow the path of the administrator or the leader of the institution. So the role is very significant. Thank you, ma'am, for reminding the role of the educational leaders in practicing the ethical competency.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is also from the same person. How to encourage peer group in accepting diversity among their friends?
Yes, it's a challenge for the teacher. And we as teachers, we believe or we perceive that we are matured persons and we can think in different manner, so that we have to identify each student and we have to accept them. But when we come to student community, it is very difficult for them to practice it. So it is the role of the teacher to inculcate the message in the classroom that each child is a precious gift for each parent, for the society, for the community, and his presence is to be respected in a classroom. So the teacher can encourage the students to accept the presence of others, to show respect to their peers in a very democratic manner. So while the teacher is trying to display this sort of attitude in the classroom, naturally students get a feel that this is the behavior to be followed in the classroom. So when a teacher gives importance to a student who has a lot of weakness, shortcomings, or disabilities, naturally, what does it indicate? The students also get a feel that he is to be attended more, he is to be loved more, he is to be included in our group. So that is a motivation from the part of the teacher. So here comes the role of the teacher and the encouragement from the part of the teacher and the reinforcement that we provide for the students who include all those students or who display inclusion in a very effective manner. The teacher can reinforce or praise them in a very public manner so that all other students follow the same pattern of behavior in the classroom. So here the role of the teacher is very important to motivate the students to accept others and to exhibit, display, develop an attitude of inclusion, especially including our fellow beings in the classroom.
Thank you, ma'am. Next question is from Madam Indira Nair. How much of inclusion principle is practiced in actual classrooms?
Yes, ma'am. We know it is varying according to different situations. There is variation in different states too. When we come to Kerala, there are inclusive classrooms where all students sitting in the classroom, the students with mental retardation, say, or we say that student with special needs, all are sitting in the same classroom. That inclusion, the theory is practiced by the presence of the students in the classroom, but how far we attend those students in the classroom, how far we encourage those students in the classroom, and what is their learning outcome by attending a common stream, all these are issues still we are facing. They are to be identified. So, as I have mentioned earlier, at the teacher education level itself, we have to train our students to depend upon certain alternate modes, some innovative techniques to attend these students so that these students also get benefited by attending a common classroom. So at present, we cannot say that there is 100%, it is 100% successful that inclusive education should be maintained or should be continued.
Thank you, ma'am. Next question is from Madam Vandana Sinha. How can we take care of special need children and induce the other students to accept and promote their abilities?
Yes, as I have mentioned earlier, the responsibility of the teacher is increasing while we deal with students of different abilities with different needs. The most important thing is we have to identify in the sense that identify the uniqueness of that particular individual so that we can help accordingly. So it requires a lot of effort from the part of the teacher, a lot of time is required, and for that special training is essential, and we need the help of teachers and trainers who have practice in handling students of special education needs.
Our principal has left now and she wants to come back. Can you do something? Okay.
Yes. So for that, we have to collaborate effectively with special educators, special education experts, doctors, psychologists, counselors. So a collaborative effort is essential to maximize the inclusive practices in the classroom.
Thank you, ma'am. There is another question from chat box. Could you brief about the interrelationship between work culture, work environment, and diversity?
Yes, I think that when we are a group of teachers, the work environment, work culture, all these are related to the teacher community. And of course, the teacher diversity is an important factor related to that. And the skills, talents, potentialities, and the culture of the teachers are entirely different, no doubt. When we come to our staff room, we can easily identify that there are teachers who are entirely different from my perspective, my attitudes, my talents, my thought process like that. But when we try to practice pedagogy or think about pedagogy or inclusive education, atmosphere is essential in a workplace. It is very easy to exclude a person by identifying some problems, some issues, some sort of conflicts. But is it possible to live together by identifying and accepting all those sort of disagreement and conflicts? That's very important. So when we are in a workplace, that's why I have explained or reminded the concept of 4 pillars of education at the beginning. It is very easy to learn, to teach, to know, and to do. We are teaching because it is a part of to do. But is it possible to live together happily in a workplace? That is very important. So diversity is not a concept related to student community only. It is a concept to be included, accepted, and practiced by the teacher community too. As mentioned earlier, tolerance and sufferance is the fuel of love. Love to be prevailed in a workplace.
Thank you, ma'am. Next question. Is it practically possible to respect the culture of individual, say, in a group of consisting of 50 students?
Why not? For that, we have to develop cultural humility. That's why I use that term, cultural humility. If we display cultural humility, there is a space. What is cultural humility? I display a space for accepting the culture of other persons too. So if I have cultural humility, I can easily respect the culture of any other person. So there is no doubt for that.
Thank you, ma'am. I think this is the last question from Mr. D. Nallamuthu. How can we care children in the classroom?
How can we care children in the classroom? Right. Teaching itself is a caring process, no doubt. The process of teaching is through caring. And I have mentioned earlier that a simple eye contact, an attentive eye contact itself is an indicator of caring. An eye contact indicates that I have a care for you. I'm here with you. When I listen to the answer of a student, when I call a student for an answer, that's a part of caring. When I inquire about some personal aspects, that's a part of caring. When I ask the question, can you understand? That's a part of caring. So everything, every action, whether it is verbal or visual, that is a part of caring that we demonstrate in the classroom. It is very easy to practice, but the students also get a feel that they are properly cared by the teacher. That's very important. If as a teacher, if I cannot maintain proper eye contact, if I'm teaching by looking at the door, looking at the floor, looking at the roof, the students don't get a feel that they are cared by the teacher. So we have to display through our interactions, through our behavior, through our conversation that you are valuable for me, so I am caring for you.
Thank you, ma'am. But there are 2 more questions. Can I read?
Yes, sure.
This is from the same person, Mr. D. Nallamuthu. How can we rationalize children in the classroom?
How can we rationalize?
Yes.
See, rationalization, of course, is an intellectual process. And if a teacher is a rational teacher, always provide examples in a very logical manner, giving opportunities for students to develop their critical thinking and logical thinking, naturally, students also get a chance to develop their critical thinking and rational thinking. And we all know the theory of Jean Piaget, where we think that the rational thinking is a part of formal operation period. And when we come to that level, secondary level of students, then only we can expect a rational thinking. Till then, we are trying to add components that will enhance the elements related to rational thinking. So that's why we are practicing, or we are pleading for critical pedagogy. That's why we are promoting thinking skills, process skills in the classroom. Through all sort of these activities, students naturally come to the thinking in a rationalized manner, in a logical manner, and they come to listen all, and it is the duty of the teacher to help them to include or to understand, to internalize only those things of truth. We can listen to everything, but internalize those things which are seen truth. That is actually the aim of rationalization. So that is a duty of the teacher to inculcate those sort of high level thinking skills at the level of maturity that we expect.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your patience and expertise in answering all those questions asked by the participants. Thank you so much.
Excuse me, teacher.
Yes.
Teacher, one question is there in YouTube stream.
Okay, then you ask the question.
Can I ask?
Yes.
How to include a child who is not able to write or learn with others in class? How to include a child who is not able to write or learn with others in class? It's a question from Shobha Vinod.
Yes. At present, we know there are many students in our schools. As a part of the inclusive education, there are students who are not able to write or learn as other students. And we call it as learning disability, dyslexia, dysgraphia, like that. We can include them. Ultimately, the aim of classroom learning is not getting a pass mark or getting a grade. We have to inculcate, develop many social skills, many emotional aspects of development through a cooperative classroom atmosphere. So a teacher and all schools have the philosophy and the principle and the guidance from the government to include all those students with these difficulties. We can include them. At the same time, the teacher should give proper care and attention that the student is within the group of the class. That is, he is unable to read, unable to learn, it's okay, but he can talk to other students. He can listen to other students. He's free to express his ideas, his concepts, his emotions. He can draw something. He can do some activities in the classroom. So the teacher can rely upon alternate mode of instruction. That's termed alternative mode. So that's the adaptable curriculum, flexible curriculum. That is to be planned by the teachers. So a student can be included in the classroom by the encouragement of the teacher and by the positive attitude of the student. That student also get a feel that he is a part of the class. And that way he becomes a part of the learning community of that particular class. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Madam, this is Ravi Govindraj from Qatar. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it's a fantastic. It's a fantastic session, eye opener in many areas, especially when when you were talking about multiple roles of the teacher, multiple perspectives, and from where the change has to come, the self-change, the self-esteem of individuals, self-concept, self-esteem, those kind of points. And finally, it's an art and science together. Teaching is an art. Wow, fantastic, ma'am. Very well presented. It's an eye-opener from the teacher's point of view. Thank you so much for a wonderful opportunity given. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for the nice words, sir.
There's a person, Mr. Rahul Chitrarkar. It's not a question, but he has repeated the sentence 2 times. Please focus more on teachers' role as scaffolders. But there is no question. But he is repeating this since I didn't read that.
Yes. Scaffolding is a very broad term. And of course, that term has been taken from the constructivist philosophy, the teachers to be scaffolders in the sense that we are giving supports to the students. And initially, we give full supports to the students and students get a feel that we are with them. And the ultimate aim is to help them to become independent problem solvers. So initially, we move away from the situation and we come whenever the student faces troubles or problems. That is the that is the concept of scaffolding. We are with the students whenever they have problems, but our aim is to help them to become independent problem solvers, because problems are very common, And whenever problems come, we all are inherited with capacities to solve that too. So the role of the teacher is to guide the learner towards the problem solving path. Teacher is not a person providing the solution for the problem. Our duty is to guide the learner towards solving the problem as his own. This is the process of scaffolding, supporting. And of course, this is to be practiced by every teacher, especially in an inclusive classroom, where the students get to feel that the teacher is a strong force behind my progress. That is scaffolding. When we come to the concept of engineering, the construction field, scaffolding is the temporary support we provide for buildings. And after some time, when we feel that the concrete is okay, we remove all those scaffoldings. Just like that, the role of the teacher is provide temporary support for the student. And whenever we feel that the student is okay with his problem solving activities, we naturally withdraw from the situation. And that is to be explained, added with the term, skill of termination is an important skill to be practiced by the teacher. So we have to identify the level, the position, the point at which we have to terminate. Our aim is to guide them to become independent problem solvers. Our aim is not to go with them till the end of their life. So the scaffolding is an important process to be practiced with its real meaning in the actual context. Thank you for reminding the concept of scaffolding as teacher as a scaffolding.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you so much. Now it's time for direct interaction with the resource person. Those participants who have already raised their hand can interact with the resource person now. Otherwise, I read out the one more question came in the chat box. Can I read the question?
Yes. Yes.
How can we teacher make balance between make students learn and finish the curriculum, please?
Okay. Finish. Okay. Finishing the curriculum is a part of the teacher. Learning the curriculum is the role of the student. So, the most important struggle we face is our inability to maintain a balance between these two things. We teachers are always trying to finish the curriculum, complete the curriculum within the allotted time. And sometimes we are not able to ensure whether the students are learning with us, learning with the same pace, or whether they are learning the curriculum message. And that is why we have included continuous assessment as a process as in the curriculum. And we say that there is assessment of learning and assessment for learning. And assessment for learning indicates that this is a check. This is to verify whether the students are learning the curriculum in pace with the teacher. So they use different sort of techniques, different tests, different questions, different assessments, different assignments like that to check whether they are for progressing with the teacher, with all other students. Still, that's a problem. Sometimes, according to individual differences, some students lag behind in completing the topics, and there are differences in learning some topics which wherever they feel difficulties. So this is always a problem of individual differences, and still the teacher through individual interactions, through individual attentions can ensure what are the problems, what are the issues related to the completion of the curriculum before the examination, and to minimize the learning or the achievement gap where the possibility of difficulties. So sometimes, of course, it is a difficult task to balance an equilibrium between finishing the curriculum and finishing the learning process by the student, because both are handled by two individuals. One is by the teacher and the other by students. Still, through appropriate student-teacher interaction, through appropriate assessment techniques, and through remedial programs, we can ensure the student also is attaining the goals, achieving the outcomes in appropriate manner. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Dear participants, please, you can ask questions now.
May I ask one question, ma'am?
Sure.
Yeah. Myself, Kumut Kumari Singh, ma'am. I am comfortable in Hindi. So, may I speak in Hindi?
Of course, you can speak in Hindi, but due to diversity of languages, I don't know. I'm not sure whether I can understand the thing as a whole, but somebody will translate it. No problem.
Yeah, no, it's easy Hindi. I will pick it. Today is Hindi Divas.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Ma'am, I have
Madam,
one
you can
son.
add English words also. In
Yeah.
between, if you add English words, it will be enough.
Okay, sir. Okay. Ma'am, I have one son that he's 22 years old, and now he is in army, lieutenant. Okay, ma'am. So once I went to Abhinav school, and Abhinav liked that chemistry teacher too much. But when that day I came back to school, and he asked me, "Mummy, आप मेरे school गई थी?" I said, "Yes, beta, I went to your school." So he said, "Mummy, chemistry teacher ने complain किया होगा?" I said, "No, she didn't complain anything." I said, "Why?" Then he started crying, ma'am, when he was 11th, class 11. So I asked, "What happened? Why you are crying?" Then he said, "Mummy, few teachers, why they are not understanding the student feeling? Why they are keeping their ego and their feeling?" I said, "Tell me that what happened in class." He said, "Ma'am, when teacher is entering the classroom, she's telling, just you see that Abhinav, how that Abhinav is intelligent. And just you ignore that study, you are ignoring study, you can see Abhinav." And what that students are that they start, ma'am, they are leaving the room when teacher is coming. So in this situation, how can we do our duty, ma'am? Because few teachers are still they are doing, ma'am. They are ignoring that student, ma'am. So even in my school also I am feeling. So in this situation, how can tackle like colleague or that situation?
True, ma'am. I agree with whatever things you have said. I also agree with the statement that the distorted ego of the teachers are a major challenge for the students in the classroom.
Yes.
Quite often, the conflicts in the classroom, when we analyze the conflicts between the teachers and the students, we can easily identify the fact that the main reason behind the issues will be the distorted ego or the immature ego, I should say, of the teacher. So the teacher diversity. So we deal with the topic student diversity, but as academia, as a learning, as a teacher community, we have to think about the teacher diversities and we have to modify our own behavior. Initially, we have to modify our own behavior so that we can make modifications in the behavior of the students. And whatever theories we teach related to learning, we know ultimately that the concept of learning is defined as learning is the modification of behavior. If learning is the modification of behavior, who should teach that? A teacher with a modified behavior. True. Then I agree with whatever you said, the issues of the teachers, the emotional instability of the teachers are challenges to the students, and that have to be addressed at the teacher education level so that we train prospective teachers in a manner that they are emotionally stable and they can display an equilibrium in the classroom in spite of all the struggles and difficulties while they face in the classroom. So this is very important, emotional stability and mature personality. All these come under the theoretical part of our curriculum, but we are unable to practice it. So displaying mature personality and emotional integrity are the prerequisites to become a teacher to practice inclusive education. I agree with that. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. Other participants, please.
Dr. Anjani ma'am?
Yes, ma'am.
Can proceed the vote of thanks, ma'am.
Shivshakti ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, audible.
Okay, are there any other participants?
No, ma'am, no.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Rosama Philip ma'am. Thank you so much. And it's now time for the official vote of thanks. So I invite Dr. Srilekha, Assistant Professor. Thanks.
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Ranjani, and I'm Dr. Srilekha here to speak on behalf of the Tamil Nadu Teachers Education University and NSS Training College, Pandalam, to speak a few words of appreciation to our wonderful resource person who is handling the session, teacher preparation for embracing student diversity. Teacher, you are a wonderful personality, and there have been many personal experiences where we have all been enthralled by your mesmerizing experiences. Wherever she is, she's a crowd puller, in real life situations. So, ma'am, thank you for dealing at length with the concept of inclusive pedagogy. And very beautifully, you incorporated the concept of happiness curriculum. Yes, there is a tendency for the mind to retain anything that is imbibed in a jovial atmosphere. So that is indeed something that we all need to learn. Again, your interpretation with regard to a beautiful concept of ions as success and failures was indeed very fantastic and we learned a very valuable lesson. Let us enjoy or even celebrate our failures. Had our teachers taken the time and effort to teach our poor students this valuable lesson, our world would not have lost such beautiful talents to this painful sickness of depression. So teachers, please shed your distorted ego and start learning. That is something that we all teacher community has to start with. So we need to relearn and unlearn. So that is a beautiful reminder. Thank you, Dr. Rosama Philip, teacher. Again, she, with the help of visuals, she put forward the concept of perceptual differences, and from cultural pedagogy, culturally relevant pedagogy, she took us to the concept of intercultural competence. It was very beautifully explained. Again, teachers as ability magnifier was a very beautiful concept. Okay, thank you, ma'am, even for that beautiful visual. It is very clear in our mind. Again, her question answer sessions were also very logically and meaningfully handled. Thank you, ma'am. That was indeed the best part of your presentation. And thank you, ma'am, for taking the time and effort to be with us. And I also thank the organizers of this webinar. A special thanks to Shivshakti Rajamal for cooperating with us, for coordinating with us, the VC of Tamil Nadu Teachers Education University, and all faculty there for joining hands with us and giving us this wonderful opportunity. I also take this opportunity to thank our principal and our office bearers for giving us this opportunity, and also the management. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Srilekha ma'am, for your words of gratitude. Now it's time for a small reminder. Tomorrow the topic will be Inclusion of Equity in Education by Dr. M. Prabhavati, Director, Center for Differently Abled Persons, Bharathidasan University, Tamil Nadu, and the time will be the same as today. So thank you for participating. Thank you, and till tomorrow, it's goodbye from the organizing team. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Rosama, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anjani, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Srilekha, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi Kondra, sir. Thank you, Dr. Premalata, ma'am. Thank you, all the panelists, and thank you, all the participants. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Can we wind up